Welcome to the September 22nd, 2021 meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. The chair acknowledges the ever assistance and continued support of our entire staff, Jen, Kevin, Alyssa, Mark, Amy, and Kristen. We have, I can't count, 1, 2. We're missing one. So Pat, you are elevated to full status. And I'd like to remind you that for commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate times. We don't speak over each other, and that all votes are done by roll call, even if you've made the motion or the second. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are located on the agenda. As per Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 regarding COVID-19, we're now allows for full participation. If you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I'll call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. And as such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. All right, first up, vote minutes, August 25th, 2021. Anyone? Everybody's muted.
I move we accept the minutes as written, subject to any modifications voiced tonight.
Bird,
Oh,
second.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as submitted. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
At night.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes as submitted. Next up, request for determination of applicability. First up, Paul and Carol S. Hill, 490 Central Avenue, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove a 2-by-8 foot section of an existing structure and to construct and maintain a second-story addition with all associated water, electrical, utilities, landscaping, and appurtenances. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff recommends a -2 under the state in the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved, Gladfelder. Second,
Harris,
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up is a continued request for determination of applicability. Susan Guston, 212 Meadow Neck Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to vista prune according to FWR 10.18, 10B. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and -3 under the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Harris, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up are requests for hearing under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. And for the public commenting, just want to remind you, commenting is limited to 3 minutes. So I encourage you to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and how they pertain to any particular application. And the chair reserves a right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to this hearing. First up, Falmouth Housing Corporation, 763 Main Street and 24 Scranton Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to demolish and remove an existing building and pave parking areas, to construct and maintain a 48-unit apartment building, municipal sewer connection, paved driveways, parking areas and utilities, and for all associated grading and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Mike McGrath up and Laura Moynihan up to present the project as well as Linda Clark of Falmouth Housing Corporation.
Hey, Mike, who's starting?
I think Laura should just introduce the project. It's a 40B project.
Okay, Ms. Moynihan?
Well,
Laura, you're all set.
I'll be happy to start.
Oh, yes.
m-
Okay.
My name is Michael McGrath. I'm a professional engineer and registered land surveyor. I work for Holmes and McGrath. My firm did the design of the site work, including the notice. This is a 40B project with a pending application before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Since this is a 40B project, we filed strictly under the State Wetlands Protection Act only. The commission should issue an order under the State Act, but also file comments with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So what I would like to do is, could you allow me to split my screen? Share my
Yes,
screen?
sir. Yes.
I don't know what happened, but I have a, Oh, this is a graphic that shows the site. This is Main, I trust you can see my arrow. This is Main Street, Scranton Avenue, and the project is basically a rather strange parcel that is shaped like this. It's 210 feet from the nearest corner of the site to the waters of Falmouth Inner Harbor. What I like to do now is switch to the existing conditions plan. This is oriented a little different than the photograph, but this is Main Street. This is Scranton Avenue. There's an existing bank building that's vacant. There's paved parking all the way around, and there's a stubby paved driveway here. This has all been disturbed area. There used to be a hotel complex here that's been torn down. There is the blue line here is the floodplain. So under the definition of a floodplain, this is a coastal bank that is the top here, and then it comes around and ties into some concrete walls. I have called the concrete walls unfinished because they are absolutely unsafe. I'm not a structural engineer. I shouldn't say that they're failing, but these, to a layman, it's obvious they're failing. At the moment, there's vegetation on both sides, but in the winter, you can actually shake these walls and they are in danger of falling down. They are under the act, since they're vertical surfaces, they are basically man-made coastal banks. So that's the existing conditions. Now what I'd like to do is switch over to the proposed conditions. And the proposed conditions is this is going to be a one large building that is going to be used for it's going to be used as a 48-unit apartment for the elderly. There is some commercial space in this location. The proposed design shows a one-way entrance onto the site, and then there is an exit here. In the past, there's been 3 exits on Scranton Avenue. Now there will be only 1. The work that is subject to the act is the work that's basically within the 100 feet landward of the existing coastal bank. So since this is under the state act, we do not show the required buffers that you have under your local regulations. In any case, there is as I said, we are showing that this existing wall is removed and is a brand new reinforced concrete wall that's going to be poured in place along this area. We're also showing that there be drainage. The drainage system consists of a series of collection drain manholes that comes down, and then it goes into a detention basin. This detention basin has been designed under the Massachusetts stormwater management standards. The Massachusetts has adopted basically stormwater management standards, and we're supposed to size this to handle 24-hour storms for a 5, 25, and 100-year storm. So the bottom line is we have filed the stormwater management plan with the Conservation Commission, and the Conservation Commission has copies of this. And the bottom line is we have designed it in strict compliance with the requirements. The other thing that we have done was, I'm sorry, I'm going back to this. We have shown that filling across this area, this has been completely disturbed ground. If you go there, it's not only disturbed, but there are portions of it that are eroding and there's silt in places. So we're going to have basically the site's going to be have loamed and seeded so to stop the erosion. The site is being graded so that it comes down to here and then grades across the site to this basically this detention basin. This detention basin is sized per the state standards for detention to minimize the siltation, and then there is a storage basin beyond it that is supposedly to leach, but there's also manholes so that there is subsurface leaching in this area. So as I said, we have done this. The Zoning Board of Appeals has already hired Beals and Thomas to conduct a peer review of the project. The review includes examining the drainage design and also reviewing wetland coastal resource considerations. So as far as we're concerned, since this is a 40B project and it's only under the act, it's been discussed with me that you'd like to hire your own consultant, but it seems to me the Beals and Thomas scope is significant enough. So the state regulations do allow you to find that a coastal bank is not significant. So what I would assert to you that the coastal banks are not seaward facing per se. If you remember, the Falmouth and the harbor is over in this direction. It's not in a velocity zone, so there'll be no wave setup. They're not eroding to provide sediment to any other resource. They're isolated from the coastal environment. In between this site and Falmouth and the harbor is a road, a small portion of a bank, and there's a hotel building that's right in this location. So this is completely isolated from the other coastal resources. And it's not connected to any other resource. It's actually 300 feet inland from the nearest coastal. It's also inland. So it's at the landward extent of the Honeyett floodplain in an inland environment. So we hope that you will see that this is a suitable project and it should be approved. It's a 40B project reserved for housing for the elderly. I'd be happy to answer any questions concerning the site design or the stormwater management program.
Thank you, Mike. You can stop sharing.
Oh.
All right, who's next? Jen?
Yeah, so first, my apologies to the board for not having a staff report prepared for this. Mike and I were on two different pages and I was anticipating Mike continuing this project so we could see the report from Beals and Thomas. So I have heard from some of you that, you know, wanted to have a peer review of the stormwater management system. I can assure you that is being done by Beals and Thomas. So I've been in coordination with the ZBA administrator. I've spoken with Beals and Thomas on the scope of their services. So the stormwater management system is going to be peer reviewed. So I would recommend that, you know, the hearing be continued for this board to get that report. If the board would like Beals and Thomas to look at impacts to that coastal bank Mike spoke about, I think the appropriate thing to do would be to invoke the consultant's fee, and then I can go and work with Beals and Thomas on amending their scope of services to include that, to see if it would require any additional funding. But all the staff has to say until we get to see Beals and Thomas's report.
All right. Laura?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, respond to that. So the procedure here, I think it's important to note, well, first, I'm Laura Moynihan, attorney for the Falmouth Housing Corporation, the developer and affirmative investments. Since this is a 40B project, the procedure that's applicable to what's before you is limited to the state wetland regulations and the state act. The consultant fee for the Conservation Commission is under your local bylaw. So procedurally, I don't see that there's an authority under your local bylaw to invoke a consultant fee. I think the procedure is that the Conservation Commission requests of the Zoning Board of Appeals that the Zoning Board of Appeals review the scope of services, again, perhaps with Beals and Thomas in consultation with Jen, to see if the Zoning Board would like to broaden that scope of services and require further services. But procedurally, I just think it's important to note that. You also have the authority to issue a written referral to the Zoning Board for any issues that you see should be reviewed or considered under the local Falmouth Wetlands bylaw. But again, the distinction here is important between what your legal authority is under the state regulations and the 40B project. I also just want to point out that I know you are the Conservation Commission, but I also know that many of you care about the community, and this is a very, very important project. It's 48 one-bedroom or 47 one-bedroom units and 1 studio unit for persons over 62. The housing production plan for the town identifies an acute need for one-bedroom units for persons over 62. The housing production plan calls for development of 486 more units over the next couple of years. And the Housing Corporation currently has a wait list of over 200 persons over 62 looking for rental housing. The infill development within this commercial area is also one of the goals of the housing production plan and the local comprehensive plan to site affordable housing. So I know those aren't Conservation Commission issues, but I just think by way of background and how important this project is to the community, we hope that you will keep those goals in mind, and we obviously will work with you and with the zoning board to try and see this project to fruition. The distinction here as well is that under the 40B process, and some of you may know this from past proceedings, state regulations and laws are not exempt. So even though the zoning board is the sole permit granting authority under the local bylaws, including your wetland regulations, because we are within state jurisdiction, we're not exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act. So that's essentially why we're here. But any consideration of the local Falmouth wetland regulations is in the hands of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and obviously in reliance on your advice and comments by way of the referral process and also through the Beals and Thomas peer review. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen?
Mr. Chairman, first off, yes, this is being filed as a 40B, but currently there are no waivers. We usually don't require, especially when a town-sponsored project as a 40B. Technically, this board could hear this project under the local bylaw as well, because they have not been granted the waivers of the local bylaw yet. We do this to streamline the process and not require an applicant to come back and amend their permit to take out any of the conditions that apply to the bylaw. So that's number one. Number two is this board absolutely has the authority to invoke a consultant under Mass General Law 53G. There's an entire document that I just pulled up on the Massachusetts Conservation Commission Association's website that was published in 2017 that gives you, that goes step by step what your authority is. So I respectfully disagree with Laura on that front. We are trying to make this as efficient as possible I coordinated with the ZBA administrator early in this process so that they hired a consultant that would be able to review the Conservation Commission issues if this board wanted to invoke a consultant, so that we would have one consultant for both committees or commissions. So those are my comments there. Again, I think it's important to wait for Beals and Thomas. And if this board does want to look at the impacts to the coastal banks, you do have the authority to invoke the consultant's fee, and we can amend Beals and Thomas's scope of services if they feel that, that would require an amendment to their scope.
What is their scope at the moment?
I can bring it up for you. 1 second, I just had it. Basically, their scope is specifically, we will review the site design with regards to A, stormwater management, B, the construction of roads, driveways, parking areas, utilities, stormwater facilities, and other infrastructure related to the development of the site, and conformity of such development with standard engineering and land use practices, as well as applicable state and federal requirements, configuration of the proposed building in connection with roadways, utilities, and other infrastructure on the site, the adequacy of the proposed water service design and wastewater disposal design, pedestrian circulation and management considerations, particularly considering the nearby senior center, landscaping design and buffering considerations, and wetland and coastal resource area considerations. So again,
And so sorry.
I would just
So
want to
they're
have
already engaged to check to review stormwater and conservation issues.
correct. But if this board wanted, I'd have to have a conversation with Beals and Thomas if they felt they needed to amend that. That's all.
Right, but the stormwater was the big thing, so that's already in process, that review.
Correct.
So we're just waiting for that to come through.
Correct.
It's not a matter of us invoking anything.
Not if you don't want to. They won't look at, they won't look at specifically the impacts to the coastal bank unless we request it.
Mr.
But I mean,
McGrath?
this board can I can look at those impacts themselves. I think the stormwater is the big one.
My name is Michael McGrath. I just want to make sure you understand that the town engineering department has already filed a 3-page review of this project, and I've answered all their comments too. So the other thing I wanted to make sure is, could I have permission to share the screen again?
Yes, sir.
Hold on. Computers and we don't get along. Share screen. So I want to bring up the, I'm sorry. This is a diagram of Little Pond Place on Spring Bars Road. And I will be blunt that in all of my 50 years of designing projects, I have never had such virulent, acidic, and critical comments as the town's consultant on this project. And the key thing is that there is a detention basin here, there are detention basins here, there's detention basins here, there's then a piping so it could go into this detention basin, and then there's one more detention basin. This was sized for a 100-year storm. So the other day we had a storm that was very close to a 1 in 100-year storm. And
This isn't our project, Mike.
But I'm trying to demonstrate that the stormwater management program does work, because we use that criteria, and there was only a little puddle here the size of 2 or 3 discs. So as far as I'm concerned, this went through your process, and you should pay attention to it, because this system worked in spite of all the very critical comments that were there. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that. So it seems to me that that we've demonstrated that this system will work. I realize you want to have a consultant. As I said, the town engineer's already filed a 3-page report. The town's already hired Beals and Thomas, but that's the way life is today.
Right, so we're just waiting to hear their feedback, and just to say it, Little Pond Place was reviewed as well, so.
Mr. Chairman, could I just make a very brief comment? I think that, what we're trying to do here is permit this project in the most efficient way possible for everybody, obviously. We acknowledge that you will want to see the peer review report. So, probably the thing to do is to wait for that report to come in, to continue this hearing until that report can be reviewed. I think that the money has already been spent. That's a cost to this nonprofit applicant of, I think it was $12,000 or $13,000 or so to hire that consultant. So while Jen and I disagree on the authority for you to hire your own consultant, and I think 53G of Mass General Laws puts that authority in the town rather than the commission. But regardless of that disagreement, we're all on the same page that we want to see this report. So I would suggest that we wait until the report is issued. Obviously, I think it would be important if Jen has concerns about the scope of that review, that there be some comments provided to the Zoning Board of Appeals in the referral process about what you'd like to see in that review, so it can be incorporated, and so we don't lose time in the process. I mean, the critical issue here for the Housing Corporation is funding for this project as well. We're trying to receive the permits by the end of the year so that they don't miss the round of state funding for next year. Otherwise, the project could be delayed another year or more. So the timing is kind of critical. Again, you know, if a continuance is appropriate, so everybody can read the report and see if you're satisfied with what they've done, then that's fine. That's what I think we should do. And not go out and hire somebody else or pay more money until we see what they're going to do.
We never said that we would want to hire somebody else. We would go with Beals and Thomas to keep it uniform.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Mike, is there anybody else on your team to speak before we hand it over to commissioners?
No, I think we're all set.
Okay.
I forgot
Wanna
to
give
tell you that it is connected. It's proposed to be connected to the municipal sewer, so there's no wastewater issues on this.
Okay,
And
no, I think you
also,
did.
there's no drainage on this property at all, Mike. I mean, you know, it's a strip site. There's water runoff off the property. I mean, it's an adverse condition right now. So, you know, this project will look to correct that significantly.
Okay. All right. Betsy, I'm gonna start with you.
Thanks, Jamie. I have two questions. One, Mike, you say that there's a deteriorating wall that is the coastal bank now, and that you're proposing to replace that wall. Am I correct in that interpretation?
Yes, that wall is failing and it's dangerous.
And you're proposing to replace it. Therefore,
Yes.
probably the impact of this project won't affect that coastal bank one way or the other. I'm
No.
trying to
Right.
assess whether we should have Jen request especially to look at that. I mean, and you might talk to Noreen and say that that's our only issue. She might just mention that. But as far as any other comments, I'll have no comments until we get the report. And can you also provide us with the town engineer's report as well?
Yes.
Thanks.
All
That's
right,
all, Jamie. Thank you.
thank you.
And
Courtney?
please
Oh,
forward
sorry.
my response also.
Courtney?
Yeah, I echo Jen's comment. I think, if the only issue is the reconstruction of that wall, and that's the coastal bank, I wonder whether we really need to hire an outside person to examine it, but maybe I'm missing something. I mean, we're talking about it's not like a virgin site that's sitting on the edge of the, harbor and so forth. We're looking at a massive redevelopment project. That's just my gut feeling. The other part of this, I understand this is a Conservation Commission meeting, but just help me understand why you felt it necessary to follow the 40B mechanism. I mean, if you're going to build all affordable housing here, why do you follow it? Is it a regulatory permitting issue, or do you want to have market rate apartments here?
I can answer that, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like.
Please.
It's because of the density, Mr. Byrd. So the property is located in a business redevelopment and a business 2 zoning district. Is the density for 48 units would not be allowed under our zoning bylaw.
Gotcha.
So 40B is the regulatory permitting authority to essentially allow for that density waiver, as well as allowing for a 3-story building, which are the two big waivers here, under the zoning bylaw.
Okay. You've answered my question, because too oftentimes we see 40B projects that come in front of us that, really doesn't solve the affordable housing issue in this town. It adds 3 units out of 50 or something, and we're
Right.
asked to permit it. So that's what I'm just getting at. And I know that's only a sidebar to what this is all about, but I needed to ask the question so I could understand the big picture.
Yes,
I have no other questions.
and I thank you for that. Just so you're aware that all 48 units will be rented to affordable households. They'll all be restricted in perpetuity and included on the town's subsidized housing inventory. So all 48 will be considered affordable rental units in perpetuity. So there are no market rate issues with profit for developers here. It's all nonprofit.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate that clarification. And I have no other questions.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien,
No questions or comments at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all right, Pat,
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Peter,
I have a couple of questions for Mike. In the area that has a crumbling concrete wall, I noticed on the drawings, it has a 8-foot elevation initially, and it winds up at 14-foot elevation. What's the surrounding elevation to, or adjacent elevations to the property in that area?
I'm looking at the plan.
Take your time.
The elevations on site are generally, well, right now there's, I mean, the average grade on site is seems to be down, like there's a top wall of 14.5, inside we have 13.8.
I'm looking at the furthest south on the plot plan, the lowest area adjacent to the proposed drainage pit.
Oh, adjacent to the, well, there's a wall all the way around, there's a top of wall all the way around it. And it's not clear what the elevation is on the other side. There is a parking lot there on Island Communicorp. In the recent rainstorm, that was already flooded. We are going to intercept the runoff, so there's a very small amount of runoff that will leave the site compared to what leaves it today. So yes, there will be some places where the wall will be tall compared to the abutting, but it was an appropriate way of constructing the site.
Well, my question is really in that area, if it's actually 8 foot above sea level and the finished grade is proposed to be 14 feet, that's a lot of difference between the adjacent properties.
All right, perhaps I could share my screen and I could show you what I'm talking about on, can I share my screen?
yes, sir.
What, all along this, I assume you can see
It's not
my,
up yet. It's not up,
What?
Mike.
oh, hold on. I hate Zoom. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
This is the aerial photograph. What I'm saying is that this is an area here where our site is going to, that this wall is going to be higher than this existing. And in the recent rainstorm, this was flooded. It was up halfway up the tire on the places, on the cars, I mean. And this wall will keep our runoff onto our site. There's a very small portion of the site in here that will drain, off the site. But the rest of the site, it's all retained on site. All the runoff will be retained on site. And yes, we're regrading this. And in order to get this to be above the floodplain for whatever future it is, we are filling this.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right, Steve?
Thank you. I assume the consultant will address the increase in impervious surfaces in his analysis. That's all I would ask.
Okay.
All right. Anybody have anything else before I turn it over to public? All right, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
It seems appropriate for us to ask for a continuance. The only issue is that we don't have a date certain for the Beals and Thomas report to be filed. So it would seem that we should have a continuance for a period of, say, 21 days after the Beals and Thomas report is filed with the town. Is that an appropriate
Well,
question?
I think it needs to go that long, does it?
yeah, actually, if I may clarify, we did request that the zoning board administrator request the Beals and Thomas report by October 15th, I believe it was, because we're back before the zoning board on October 29th. Linda can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the 29th. So we had asked them to provide the report so that we could have time to review it and respond. So if there's a time in there between the October 15th and the 29th that you have some availability, that might work very well, because you may be able to see the report, and then we would be back before the zoning board on the 29th. So the 20th of October, is that available by chance?
Well, the Beals and Thomas report is only going to be until, and I think you're thinking of the 14th and the 28th, because the 15th and the 29th are Fridays, Laura. So if we get let's say the Beals and Thomas report comes in by the 14th, this board might have some questions on it. Or Mike might want to respond to the Beals and Thomas report, which we would want a copy of as well. So I think a more appropriate date would be the 27th, because you would be meeting with the ZBA on the 28th, correct?
May I intervene, Mr. Chair? Linda Clark.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. The ZBA hearing was continued to the 21st.
Okay, excuse me.
The 21st, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then we could meet the 20th if they had the report.
Yeah, we'd like to make that request for continuance to the 20th, if the board feels that's appropriate.
So moved.
Bird second.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to continue this until October 20th, with the understanding that we hope to receive the report on or around the October 14th. And then, depending what happens, we can address it from there. So are there any other comments or questions before we turn it over to voting? Okay, so again, the motion and the second is to continue this hearing until October 20th. Betsy?
Glenfelder, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until October 20th. Thank you, Ms. Moynihan. Thank you, Mr. McGrath.
Thank you.
Thank you all. My
Thank you.
apologies for the date mix-ups. Thank you.
Not a problem. All right. Next up. Benton and Melody Brown, 159 Upalong Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct an addition to an existing dwelling and to remove portions of an existing driveway and walkways and to upgrade an existing septic system with no increase in design flow. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Tom Bunker up to present his project.
All right, thank you very much. I'm Tom Bunker for the record, and I prepared this plan for Fenton and Melody Brown and Upalong Road. And we've actually gone through many changes on this. We've gone through about 4 different owners. So we've been at it a long time. I'd like to share the screen, and I will get into the description of the property, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Well, what I have up here first is just a Google aerial photo. So I can just show you this marker. It's on this peninsula of land between Bourne's Pond, and this is the Israel's Cove in this location. You've been there, so you know what it takes to get there, going Bacon Farm Road, along this old dirt road through a lot of conservation land, including the old Sea Farm parcel, and then down into Upalong Road. This is the property here. Town-owned land on the west of it. This salt marsh coming in this location, and there's another private property at southeast of the Fenton property. Our site plan is here, and so I've just done a quick coloring. We have is obviously a land under water body, Israel's Cove here, which is tidal, high tide line is salt marsh going along here, and a slope coming up steeper than 10-1. This entire area up to this line right here is in a flood zone, elevation 12. There is a velocity zone, velocity flood zone along in this location along the shore, and the coastal bank within this velocity flood zone has a 50-foot zone A, which runs through the house. Salt marsh has a 100-foot zone A, which is the furthest landward through here, generally, except at some location, the zone A of this coastal bank goes a little further inland than the salt marsh zone A. Coastal bank zone B, 100 feet, is to this location around here. Those are the furthest inland zone B. There's more salt marsh and coastal bank in this location, and the zone B comes this way. So over the years, the property has been moving landward. Actually, I made a mistake on the narrative where I said the house is 11 feet from the top of the coastal bank and 26 feet from the salt marsh. And that reminded me there used to be a house even closer in this location in where the mitigation planting. So when the existing house that you see now was built, it was a replacement for a house that was even closer. And so this house moved back. There had been an old garage, and the garage was rebuilt in this location. If you went out there, you'd see what looks like a almost brand new foundation and slab in here with the anchor bolts exposed. this barn under an RDA, or rather the garage rather, was taken off of this foundation and moved back. It's in this location now, just for storage and whatnot, and actually the irrigation water well is in this garage. So this is an existing coverage here, and so what I've colored in, you see a lot. Oops, wrong way. A lot of this addition is outside of the Zone B, outside of the mitigation planting area. This part right here, this rectangle, is sitting on the existing slab foundation. And what I colored just generally is this green area right here, the paved, it's paver stones, not asphalt paving, was put in 2011, and this amount of impervious surface will be removed, as well as the walkway coming along here to be removed. And others, I mean, have a more in-depth, more detailed drawing, which shows the coverage. The green is a decrease in coverage. The red areas are increasing coverage. So you can see there's some patio up front here. This porch is porch being added here, but it's not counted as increase over this gravel paving strip. House is being added here. So there is a net decrease in Zone A of 589 square feet, which is mainly attributed to this parking area, driveway. And in Zone B, a net decrease of 390 square feet, which again, part of this parking area is in Zone B. And the increased areas are the red areas. So the house, you said, is mainly going outside of the mitigation area, and a circular drive will be added, a new garage here, and a new septic system, because the length of this pipe coming out of the house, it's going to get too low to the groundwater. So there's a pump chamber in this tank, which will elevate this new septic system higher above the groundwater than the existing septic system. And it is also further from the open water of Israel's Cove. Dry wells are proposed wherever they're not any now. There are some that were installed for when the garage was here. They will be reused, and others added all around to control the stormwater runoff. So by removing impervious surface in Zone A, it's a large net decrease in Zone A impervious surface, and Zone B, and having most of the development beyond the mitigation area. I think this is a good project, and as I said, with the reduction, it's can be seen as an improvement to the quality in Zone A. And so I will stop my share now and take questions.
Thank you, Tom. Jen, do you want to begin?
I'm sorry.
The staff doesn't have much. Tom, can you tell us what that little structure is on the beach?
Yes, that is, let me get that here. You're talking about, I meant to bring this up. It's in your staff report. This right here is a kayak rack.
You're not
Okay.
sharing, sir.
Excuse me? Oh, I'm
You're not
sorry.
sharing.
I'm not sharing. I'm talking to myself. Hold on a second. If I may share, I will. Okay.
There you
Now
are.
I'm sharing.
Yes.
Yeah, so I hadn't looked at these pictures. Jen sent this to me in the report. So this is a kayak rack in this location. I went out there and talked to Mr. Brown and said that the requirement, I'm sure the requirement would be to take it out of there and, you know, put it in a new upland location. This, well, it looks like a structure is, I'm not quite sure what that square is, but this here is a crushed shell path. Mr. Brown put that in there. It has little like tread kind of things across it. It had been just a grassy path, which was getting muddy, and there's probably some erosion coming down from that. So we put this in, it's crushed shell. It's about, measured, it's about 19 or 20 feet long, 3 feet wide, 60 square feet. Overall, there's still a large decrease in coverage. And I feel that this is, let's say, crushed shell or stone is not treated generally when it's used for a driveway. I think as a walking surface, it's going down to the beach. I think it's preferable to a lawn which can get rutted and be muddy. And I hope you would allow that to remain. As far as the size of this, well, I think it's. I'll have to look through our survey notes and see if we have actually located this. I think we did to some extent when I was there. It didn't look a lot different from how I remembered it, but of course, when I was there, it was pretty high tide. The water was up here, and this picture seems to have taken a pretty low tide. And the previous picture that you referred to, Jen, from 2014, I think.
Mhm.
You know, hard to say what the tide was or anything, but this is what it was when it was a smaller path. This is after the house had been there for 3 years, and it was a smaller path. And you can see the shelf of the salt marsh, but I'd have to look back at our survey notes to see. I think we did locate this, but I'll have to check that out and see what we have as far as information on that. So your question of that structure is a kayak rack and a crushed shell pathway going down to the beach.
Correct. I'd like some information on that, please.
Yeah, okay, I'll take this down now.
That's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, Courtney.
I have no questions at this point.
Evan?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Pat?
No questions, thank you.
Peter?
No questions. Thank you.
Steve?
No questions. Good presentation. Thank you.
Betsy?
I have a comment. Tom, I felt your analysis of increase or decrease in the A and B was very helpful. I appreciated that.
I knew there'd be some questions about it.
Yeah. And the other question I have is, do they have a generator? I looked back and saw you had an AC pad, but is there a place already for a generator?
There is, Fenton told me it's at the back of the house by the AC. There is a generator.
By the AC?
He told me he
There must-
does have a whole house generator already.
Yeah, and maybe it's just on a pad. Must be
Yes.
on a pad. Okay.
On a pad
Thanks.
with a propane tank, and that wasn't added to the plan.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking when you're saying you're going to pump the sewage and you have to pump the well water,
Right.
you would not want to be without electricity.
Mhm, exactly.
That's all. Thanks, Tom.
All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement then.
Harris, second.
We've got a tie going there.
What about the
I go
information?
to the lady,
on
Courtney, you lose.
You still don't think you guys require the information on the path or the little beach area?
Can we
I mean, it
condition
doesn't,
that?
the little path area doesn't, I mean, the little beach area. There was a little bit more salt marsh there back in like 2005. It's slowly been kind of eroding. Makes sense with the use of that area. But in the past, like 10 years, it hasn't changed significantly. But Tom, you might have to pull up that little shell pathway.
Pull up what?
You might have to pull up or remove that little shell walkway. The board will decide in deliberation.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you can close it then, I guess.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close this hearing. Is there any other comments, questions? All right. Taking the vote alphabetically. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
And I,
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Bunker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thanks.
Next up, Looping Yi and Ming Zhang, 45 Green Pond Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct and maintain an addition and an attached garage to an existing single-family dwelling, to reconfigure an existing stone driveway, and for all associated clearing, excavation, dry well installation, mitigation planting, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Nate Goshgarian up from Holmes and McGrath to present his project. He wanted to be a co-host earlier in the
I
night.
tried my best, but you know,
He did.
you guys just wouldn't have it. Yeah, thanks for having me. Welcome back, Jen. Nice to see everybody, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Permission to share my screen, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, so for the record, Nathan Goshgarian with Holmes and McGrath on behalf of the client. The property that we're talking about tonight is 45 Green Pond Road. 45 Green Pond Road is a residentially developed parcel of land on the eastern bank in the northern vicinity on Green Pond, right around here. The parcel currently features about 12,800 square feet, and the house on site was built in 1968. So the property as it stands currently features a single-family home, a stone driveway, associated landscaping, a kayak rack, and timber retaining wall. And resources on or within 100 feet of this property include land under the ocean, land containing shellfish, salt marsh, coastal bank, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. So this project is pretty straightforward. It's an addition to the currently existing house, which is a garage. This garage is going to be located here. Its location will require a slight modification of the driveway right here. And other aspects of the project include drywall installation, mitigation plantings, grading, and landscaping. So before I go into the mitigation planting as a restoration planting associated with this project, I'll just go over the setbacks real quick. We've got our 100 feet setback from the salt marsh right here. And we've got our 50-foot setback starting here at the top of the coastal bank, which neatly lines up basically with the end of the 100 feet from the salt marsh. And then the rest of this buffer is zone B in here. So we do have impervious increases in zone A and B. For zone A, it's 333 feet. FWR zone A requirements include a 3-to-1 mitigation ratio. We've got a 46 square foot increase in zone B. For that zone, it's a mitigation ratio of 2-to-1. So if you throw in those two multiplier factors and add them, you get 1,091 square feet needed. Additionally, in terms of restoration plantings, there will be an additional 360 square feet That is derived from some of the vegetation located directly south of the existing dwelling that will be removed and then relocated in another form in this green area with the other mitigation plantings. Yeah, so I think in terms of the scope of the project, that's all I have, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. You can stop sharing.
Okay, one day.
Thanks. Jen,
Actually, Nate, can you share again for me, please?
Yeah.
Can you just point to the previous mitigation, those shrubs that were on the staff report? Where are they? And you said that you went out and located them and they look great.
Yep, right here. Pepper bush, azalea, and raisin,
Oh, okay. All right.
all in great condition.
Okay. And
anything
is
else?
that, no, is
Yep,
that
this is them right here. Yep.
so down in that corner? Okay. All in great condition. So we might have you put them on the plans unless those little pine looking, usually they denote pines are for them, but we might just have you revise the plan just so we have it on there.
Yep. Sure. You can make
And
these.
then Alyssa noticed there was a tree removed from the front of the house.
Yep. So after receiving the staff report, I did go on the site just to verify the condition of the plants. The owner was there. I did speak with him, and his, rationale. Number one, obviously, was not aware that there was any type of permitting, but his concern was just the close proximity of this rather massive tree that was getting pretty close to his roof and the structure. So that was his reason for removing the tree.
Okay. And I believe you guys are working with him to get that dock properly licensed. He came in to see us
Okay.
earlier.
Yep.
Okay. I spoke with Jeff about that. Okay.
I did.
The dock does have a license. It's just the license wasn't transferred into your client's name, I guess.
Gotcha.
Not so much the Concom permit, but the license from
License
Waterway.
itself. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, Mr. O'Brien, you want to start?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
No questions, thank you.
Peter,
No questions.
Steve,
No questions.
Betsy,
Questions?
Courtney,
Courtney, you're on mute.
I'll make it unanimous, no questions.
oh, I'm gonna blow it. I'm gonna make a comment. No, actually, I think it's a good project. I like the way you guys covered the mitigation. You really didn't make us demand anything.
Good. Glad to hear
Thank you
that.
for that.
You're welcome.
So I'll
Jen,
make
is
a
there anything in
motion.
the, hold on.
Sorry.
Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Now I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Third, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Betsy,
Until aye.
Courtney,
Third, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Parasite.
Peter,
Walls, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Nate.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Your colleague was
Night.
upset that the board didn't have any questions. Night, Nate.
An automatic gold star.
You know, sometimes it's all the information is there,
What do you
and
mean?
then they provided everything and the presentation is short and sweet. I mean, I like it. Hope everybody's
Okay.
listening.
Just like
Right.
we like it.
Yep. All right. Next up are continued hearings under notice of intent. First up, Dick J. Bowes, 203 Chappaquay Road, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to renovate an existing single-family house, garage, and decks, and for all associated demolition, clearing, utilities, dune restoration, and landscaping And Betsy, what's the quorum?
Everyone but you, Jamie.
All right, I'm still gonna bless you with my presence, though. All right,
In direction.
and direction, yeah, misdirection. Jen? you wanna hand
Yes,
it right
Mr.
over to Mr.
Chairman,
Santos?
Yes, and Mr. Santos would like the same treatment that Mr. Goshgarian just had, and he'd like no questions as well.
Well, if he provides that, then he'll get it. Mr. Santos, you're up, sir.
Good evening. For the record, Tim Santos from Holmes and McGrath, representing the applicant. If you could promote Darshini Joseph and the applicant DJ Bossy as well, I'd appreciate it. But
I'm doing that right now.
But I will start my presentation. If you don't mind, I will share my screen.
Yes, sir. Or no, sir, I don't mind.
All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right, the project is located at 203 Chappaquiddick Road, and it was before you, I believe, 3 weeks ago at this time. The board we did discuss the project. The board had a few questions and concerns and asked us to look at revising the limit of work to see if we could bring it in closer to the house and help reduce the number of trees that were proposed to come down. So we have revised the limit of work and brought it closer to the house after talking with the contractor. So originally there were 21 trees to be removed. Now we're proposing 7. They are shown on the plan with an X. There's one right behind the garage. There's 2 adjacent to the garage, and there's 4 to the south of the house. These 4 are actually, if you've been to the site, they're pretty beat up and dead. So the board also requested a revised landscape plan, which we have provided, and Darshini can review it and discuss it with you if you have questions, as well as revised architectural plans to show the removal of the lattice work that was below the piles, kind of like as breakaway panels. So that has all been submitted. And there was also some questions in regard to construction methodology. We did receive that from the contractor, and we submitted that as well as the geotechnical report. So if the board has any questions, either myself, Darshini, or the applicant will be more than happy to address them. And I will stop sharing.
Thank you, sir. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So no enclosure at all, Tim, correct?
Correct.
Just to clarify and get it in the record, there's no lattice work enclosure at all?
There's no lattice.
All that's been removed. And this, and they're only having a staircase going up. There's no enclosure at all.
There is no enclosure below.
Okay. I think those were the biggest concerns I had. I did have some comments on the landscaping plan. I believe those, for the most part have been addressed. The cedars were moved away from that leaching field. That was, one of our concerns. And then the sweet fern and the bearberry have been reduced. And you added, Mr. Vasuf, you added a lot more shrub material in the front. Before it was all like seagrass, correct? All beach grass in the front?
Yes, we added the bayberry and the cedars. We wanted some height there now that we're not having the lattice panels, so we're gonna do our best to see if they survive. But yes, so we increased that, and also increased the number of bayberry. That was one of the comments too. So yes.
And the limit of work has been reduced, so you're saving more of the cedars in the back of the property as well, which is nice to see. And Tim, did you kind of touch on? And sorry, I was looking over something during part of your presentation. Did you say where the house was going to go? They say they're going to move the house and then move it back. Are they staging the house somewhere, or how is that going to happen? It's a tight area with all that dune.
Yeah. I'm going to reshare my screen if you want to hold on 1 second. And DJ can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when the existing deck and porch on the existing house are removed. What they're proposing is to bring this house, store it in this area, drive the piles. Okay, and then they're gonna slide the house back over onto the piles, and then they would drive the remaining few piles. And I believe that's what it says in the construction methodology, or that's the way it was explained to me. So if I'm wrong, DJ, could you correct me if I'm wrong?
No, you're correct. If we're facing the house and the ocean's behind us, they're proposing on sliding the house over the driveway to the left, drive the piles in, and slide it over all the way to the right, drive the piles in, and then recenter it.
Okay, so it's going over the driveway, not in the dune area.
So, yeah, so what he's saying, it's gonna go over the driveway half first. They'll drive the piles to the right, then they're gonna slide the whole house over to the right and drive the piles to the left. So I was just incorrect in the order of drop.
Okay,
which way
okay.
it's going, sorry.
All right. Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, Pat, we'll start with you.
No questions, Tim. Thank you for responding to our request. Thank you, Mr.
Number
Chair.
one, Peter.
Thank you again for responding to all of the questions, and I have no further questions.
Thank you. Steve.
All set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy.
Darshini and Tim, a lovely presentation. You're lucky to have those people working for you, Mr. Boss.
Courtney.
I'll second that. It's usual that when you have that kind of situation, the house gets jacked up, they put the foundation underneath and then drop it back down. So this is a very different and interesting approach, and it very intriguing, and it sounds great. And I, very ingenious. I take my hat off. Thank you.
Kevin.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll make a motion to close this hearing and take it under advisement.
For a second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Are there any further comments or questions? All right. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. You have closed this hearing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You too, Tim.
And you
I
guys,
always look
you need to give me.
forward to the weekend when I see you.
I say it because I don't know when I'm going to see you guys next. Usually it's like next Wednesday or the Wednesday after. So that's why I say it.
Yeah.
But you got to give Nate a harder time. Otherwise I'm going to be out of a job. So, but thank you very much and have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Night.
And before I skip again, the chair acknowledges the presence and ever participation of our select board liaison, Sam Patterson. Thank you, Sam. Next up, Greg Clancy, Clancy Construction, 71 Alder Lane, North Falmouth, Mass, for permission to expand an existing garage, remove and replace 5 native trees, and for all associated excavation. Betsy, can you give me the quorum, please?
Yes, I'll give you the shortened version. It's everyone but you, Jamie.
I like it that way. All right.
It seems you only miss one meeting, but it seems we're saying this all the time.
I'm sorry. You want me to miss more?
Well, it must have been a
Call it-
busy meeting. No, I don't want you to miss them.
More. Yeah. All right, Jen.
Yes,
Okay,
Mr.
right over to
Chairman,
Mr.
I
Bunker.
promoted Tom Bunker up, yes.
Mr. Bunker, you're up again, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm
Welcome
up. I'm glad to be back. Such a short break.
Did you have pizza at the break?
No, actually, I had a phone call at the break.
Uh,
But I was hoping to get a little more prepared for this, but I had other things. So anyway, I'll share my screen. I don't have any color on this plan, but whoops, there it is. Well, just to give an intro, I'll give show you the aerial photo of 71 Alder Lane. For the record, name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design, and this is the property right here. You can't actually. This little bit right here is one part of the project that's wasn't permitted. And then there's a bit in the back, but I'll back up a little bit. And so I say this is before you, partly because we have the high tide line from the Wild Harbor River comes up into this location. So the riverfront area, 200 feet, crosses over this little island of the driveway. And the flood zone comes right up to the front of the house right through here. I will look for there it is. The site plan. So I met with, I was out there with Kevin Newton a couple of weeks ago in the rain to talk about these things. I think first thing that Kevin kind of exclaimed about was that he looked at it, this here right here, this coastal bank, and he said, "That's the coastal bank DEP is worried about." That is, and maybe I shouldn't have mentioned the coast being work so close to on a coastal bank right in the brief description of the project. But anyway, here we are. So the flood zone, as we went over before, comes right up along here, and some of this area has a slope of steeper than 10 to 1. At the previous hearing, Betsy asked if we could save these 2 trees. So you have 2 trees that are still X'd out to be removed, and another oak tree right here. These 2 are in the proposed driveway, and this one is just too close. The 2 more that I had proposed to be removed are right here, which I did have the contouring going down through them, but they're only, barely a foot under fill. So have a wall built along here, and I call it with native stones. I mean, it's possible it could be built with the wall, the modular stacking wall with pins, but I imagine they'll hit a few rocks when they start digging this hole. They might have excess rocks. But a wall here will be about 4 feet clear of the trunk of the tree and about 4 feet clear of the foundation for the garage. And so I think this is certainly workable. And when it's put back in, it'll leave a little bit of room for passage along the side of the garage, if that's how people want to get around to go up to the front door. So in addition, I did mention that, I mean, there are a few rocks here now. 1 or 2 rocks, if pulled up, could be put along there, with, I think I don't know if we on a stone, but probably not a stone by stone basis, but if they have some rocks up, they might ask the staff to see if that's advisable or not. And we have this is a lawn area around the rocks, and then down there and around the base of the oak trees here. So I had 6 2-gallon inkberries and 2. These are smaller, so I have a root ball because they're possibly going to need a smaller hole to dig to plant them. So possibly less damage to the roots of the oak trees. 2-gallon winterberries, so inkberry winterberry around here to give some stabilization to the soil after it's regraded there a little bit. So that's part of this work here, keeping the 2 trees with a small, this wall is only, it's 1 to 2 feet tall right through here. You know, it's doesn't need structural design or anything, I believe. As before, this part of the patio is to be removed. There is a permission letter, or more of a demand letter, that from the homeowners association to remove this wall and the part of the patio that's encroaching. And so it'll be cut back about 6 feet. And this existing deck going through here is being removed and replaced with a couple, just a stone stoop and steps. So I didn't have it on here before. This isn't really new, but this patio has, once the deck is removed, the patio has to end somewhere. So this area, into this area will be infilled with the same patio block. And then the area downhill from it will be seeded with grass seed mix to get rid of the mulch that's there. And this will hold water better, slow any flow of water, and reduce any chance of erosion in that location. And we have the issue of, let me get a picture here for you. So this is a Google Street View turns out had a picture of the house before these additions were put on. And as you can see, from the aerial view, I said there were no trees or vegetation removed to put on. There's like a sunroom over here and some porch across here. So you can see in this view, there was nothing there to begin with except lawn, and that's for this screen porch, screen porch and this open porch area, which was added. No record of getting conservation approval. And this at one time was a solarium, and then it seems to have been expanded into a larger addition in the back also. And there were some, I can show them again, but I think we showed last time a sequence of aerial photos when they appeared between sometime between 2011 and now. I think the dates were, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, Janet. But anyway, they appeared, these additions in front and back appeared. There's no record of conservation approval. And so Zone B, work in the Zone B, although not requiring mitigation because this coastal bank does not have a Zone A. And so there's no mitigation planting, only has to be done to the extent that to fully vegetate the Zone A of a resource area. But I put an area down here, 190 square feet. We kept the same amount of, I think we kept the same amount of proposed trees. No, we reduced the trees coming out, and so the 3 trees being removed and 3 trees being replaced, but then also 190 square feet of native shrub area in here with the arrowwood, inkberry, and winterberry in this location, since this is partly within the riverfront area. Could have made slightly bigger, but not too much, because being at an intersection, had to maintain sight lines across this island to see oncoming traffic approaching the intersection. So it's the expansion of the garage location here, some stabilization, revegetation on this coastal bank disturbance, and some other native planting as an improvement to the resource area for work in a Zone B back here. So I'll take my share off the screen and take any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Jen?
No, the only thing I was looking for, Tom provided, and that was the permission to remove the patio from the association property. Thank you, Tom. That was a messy one.
Yeah. I hope to get through it.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, commissioner comments. Peter, we're gonna start with you.
Questions?
All right, Steve.
No questions, thanks, Tom.
Betsy.
Thanks for incorporating all those suggestions and unintended corrections to it.
Courtney.
Well done. Thank you. No comments.
Kevin.
No comments, thank you.
Pat.
No comments, thank you.
I sense a theme. All right, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close this hearing. If there are no further comments or questions, I'm going to take the vote. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bunker.
Jen, could I confirm, was the next one continued? Not
Yes.
to have?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Well, it's going to have to be advertised, but yeah, you're all set, Tom. Don't worry about it.
Okay, thank you. And as some people say, have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Have
See
a
you
good
next week.
weekend, Tom.
Okay,
Thanks, Tom.
thanks. All right.
All right, next up are requests to amend an existing order of conditions. Edmund and Salpy there stepping in 19 Nauset Avenue East, North Falmouth, Mass. Request to amend the order of conditions for Mass DEP number 25-4627 to remove proposed circular stairs and to propose an expanded deck. Ben?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was actually misadvertised. It's actually 29 Nauset Ave East. So I'm looking and it does not look like Kevin put it on the public hearing notice for the 29th. So it'll probably be on October 6th. We'll advertise that.
You want a continuance to October 6th?
We can't continue it. It was advertised incorrectly. We have to re-advertise it so we'll be re-advertising the matter. So that's all.
All right,
So we don't have
how
to
do we
do
deal with
anything.
it tonight?
You don't have to do anything. It was just misadvertised. It was a mistake. There's no action needs to be taken on the thing.
Okay, but you have it scheduled for the 6th?
We're going to have to now because, yeah, I think Kevin informed Tom that he would re-advertise it for the 29th, but it doesn't look like he put it on the public hearing notice. And that went out last week while I was gone. So I'll make sure it's on the 6th. I'll put it on the thing right now. The spreadsheet they used to create the public hearing notice.
No, it's fine. I just want to make sure we're following.
Yeah, no, that's why we're re-advertising is so we're doing this properly.
Okay, and there's no action on our part tonight.
No.
Excellent. That was easy. All right, next up, continued hearings under an enforcement order. Kevin and Christina Doniger, 59 Sherwood Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted construction of a patio and unpermitted reconstruction of a deck.
Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, I do not see Ms. Doniger in the attendees list. She was the property owner that had the technical, she couldn't get back into the meeting. We had her on a couple of weeks ago and then she couldn't cut back into the meeting. This has been on there for a while. This was discovered at the beginning of August, and we were accommodating their travel schedule for most of August. I will inform them that we will continue it to, I'm looking at next. We could do it next week. And if she doesn't appear next week, we'll just move forward with the enforcement hearing and issuance of an enforcement order. Does that seem fair? I really do want to give them the chance to respond because it is significant what they need to do.
No, that's fair, but it also can't go on and on and on indefinitely.
No,
either.
absolutely. At the end of this hearing, I will send her an email. And
All
Kevin
right.
has the 29 Nauset Ave East on the schedule to advertise for October 6th. It's all set.
Okay.
So we don't need to vote anything, right?
Well, you do need to vote
We need to
to,
continue it.
Oh, till the 29th?
I would do it
Correct.
tonight. Correct.
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue this to the 29th of this month, which is September.
All right, so we have a
Second.
motion and a second to continue this enforcement hearing until 9/29. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Actually, I don't know if it matters for continue, but I wasn't at this, so I'm not on the quorum, so I shouldn't vote, correct?
Well, we haven't opened anything.
Okay.
It's
right,
all,
just
I have it
clarifying.
all blank with just one date after
Okay.
another.
Misunderstood, thank you. All right, so Matthews, aye, Kevin,
Oh, O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this enforcement hearing until 9/29. Next up, order of conditions. First up, Arthur Muse, 148 Antler Shore Drive, East Falmouth, Mass.
Now, this is the one where they want to drive, they're repairing part of the existing bulkhead. They want to drive that sheet piling in to prevent additional erosion of that beach area. And there is a float that keeps showing up in the aerials that needs to be conditioned not to be put back in. I heard the commission didn't really have too many comments about the sheet piling and whether or not it was going to impact that downdrift sediment. There's not a lot you can do there. And when they did have a beach nourishment permit back in the 90s, I think late 90s on that property, and CZM came out against either an extension or another order of conditions to keep adding sand to that property because of its impacts on the estuary. So, you're balancing, impacting the estuary between putting all the sand on there and letting that, it naturally erode, and then protecting the house with that sheet piled wall.
Yeah, and the
And
state,
it's really wall, it's kind of goes in and it's only about 2 feet above grade.
yeah, but the
Barely above
state,
grade.
the state suggested a soft solution, but that's not
Yeah.
going to do anything there. It's a waste of money.
Yeah. Well,
Also contradicts CZM.
I believe it was the Division of Marine Fisheries that was asking you for the,
For that,
yeah. It was either Division of Marine Fisheries or, I think it,
Somebody
So-
did.
into the soft solution, so.
So I have 2 notes about conditions. One was mitigating for any barge scouring.
Okay, how would you want them to do that?
it has to be
Right back at
timed.
you.
It has to be timed. It's in the narrative, but it should be emphasized that it has to be done at high tide.
Okay, You know, they just spud those things down, right? They don't float. High tide,
And according
okay.
to Mike Borselli, the float that's not permitted has been removed and it will not return.
Well, I think you should just condition that.
No,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So make a finding, I will make a finding on the float and then a condition.
Yeah. Is there a reason why we don't have the other Antler Shore Drive? Does anybody remember what happened last week? Did we continue it for some reason?
No,
They're
it's here.
closed.
There's two of them.
154
148,
closed.
154.
Oh, sorry.
But we opened them separate.
Right.
Yeah, no, I know they have to be separate, but I didn't think I had two sheets, but I do. It's next.
I just want to make an observation on this. I know we discussed this at the hearing, and that was, does the sheet piling constitute an armoring of the bank? And the consensus.
Not a
is-
bank, Courtney.
That's what I'm getting to. The consensus was it wasn't a bank, and so therefore it wasn't a problem. And that's good, but it becomes an armored bank when it erodes back to that bank. So that's an interesting observation. I don't know where we go with that, but you know, I wonder whether something like this is going to come back later on. You know, what's an armored bank and what isn't? And I understand what you're saying, Betsy. Technically, it is not a coastal bank, but it's just an interesting twist on, you know, the debate versus of hard armoring versus the soft solution, and where we go with
It's
it.
the
I don't-
Mike McGrath theory of coastal banks.
Come on.
Anyway, I don't want to dwell on it. I just raising that for a point, because I have a feeling we may see similar kinds of creative solutions down the road.
Anybody have anything else they want to see in there? All right, what's your pleasure?
I'll move to accept the order as discussed.
Harris, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Third eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, George, Mary, and Leopold Fontana, 154 Antler Shore Drive Trust, 154 Antler Shore Drive, East Falmouth, Mass.
And this is to just reconstruct the existing licensed bulkhead with a replacement vinyl bulkhead. And they're removing the timber bulkhead, correct?
If you would call it that.
They're putting in the sheet piling and they're replacing the walkway and outer bulkhead.
No, I understand that.
And we also discussed the stairs at the end, which to me, look, you have to have access to it.
All right.
Everybody remember that?
Mhm.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, they're removing the old wall and putting the new wall in, or are they putting the new wall behind the old wall and then removing the old wall, or are they putting the new wall?
That's
in front?
it. They're putting in a new wall in back of the old wall. The old wall's vertical, not horizontal.
Yeah,
It's dilapidated. It'll be an easy removal.
okay.
The walkway will continue.
Well, it'll be rebuilt, right?
Yes, with new materials.
Yeah, the little dock walkway on the top is gonna be it's gonna be rebuilt. Okay. What do you want to see?
Straightforward, unless you want to reference the fact that they need to amend their Chapter 91 license. The old plan mislocated the bulkhead. Had it on the outer side of the dock or the walkway rather than the inward side.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
It
Okay.
was just a mistake on the plan.
Yeah, they
submitted with
might let
Chapter
that go
91.
under a minor modification.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Mike said he had to do it anyway, right? But it
Did.
also, I mean, not only does he have to do it, but he has to show the correct position of the bulkhead.
Right.
Was there a storage bin or AC unit to be added to the drawing?
Oh, yeah, she missed that. So I'll have Mike just submit a revised plan with those elements on there.
Shall I make a motion to accept?
I'd second it if you did.
All right, well, I'll make a motion to accept as discussed.
Bird second.
Be shy. All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the order of conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Parasite.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. And before we go on, Jen, just Kevin and Alyssa did fantastic. So you can go away more often. We're okay with that. So,
Thank you.
good stuff.
Finally.
Joy Kaplan,
I wasn't
trustee.
worried
Joy
about them.
Kaplan. They're fantastic. Very well prepared. All right, moving on. Joy Kaplan, trustee, Joy Kaplan, 2003 revocable trust, 41 Bywater Court, Falmouth, Mass.
This was for the second story sort of addition, the little bump out in the front.
They need to either have a boring or they need to dig a test pit.
That's what, okay. So why are we doing that, Betsy? They mentioned it.
Because we had this discussion about who their stamped plan was, and we asked whether that was done. And several of us are concerned that it's built on area that very likely has peat underneath. So while the structure might be capable of handling the additional weight, is the ground capable of handling the additional weight? That's our question.
Right.
I thought we had a discussion that if they were amenable to delays and not ask for any emergency action, if they had a problem in the construction phase, like the foundation cracking, it was okay, but we were not going to rush in an emergency. And they had a choice of either having a non-boring or a boring, but without the boring, it's no emergency if they have to stop for a normal process of review of Concom for any additional work.
It's just
I see
cleaner.
what you're saying.
Yeah, but it's just cleaner to have a boring rather than to have a crack and then have to come back. And of course, they're going to say it's an emergency. Everything's always an emergency.
I think the discussion ended, however, with them saying they were not going to do borings. They were totally satisfied with their preliminary reviews, and the commissioners who were concerned about it not being certified by a structural engineer, because there had been no borings, that there'd be a condition that said, if you run into structural problems, we're not giving emergency relief, you need to file again.
Well, that's
Is
what
that-
Peter just said.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay, I get that.
I think it's cleaner just to have them do a test pit. See what that's being built on.
Yeah.
How about they have the option to do a boring? And if they don't, with the understanding that if they need to do any additional work to the foundation or whatever, outside of this proposed project, that there will be no emergency authorization. They will have to stop work and go through the
That's
normal.
fine. That's fine.
But if you want me to force them to do a boring, I will.
I don't know how we can do that.
I think the way you have it, it's fine, but the other thing is.
We've
when they
done that
file
on
for a
other
bill-
projects, Pat.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Betsy.
Yes. Sorry,
Well,
Jamie.
I mean, why not tell them that's a condition of the order? They're gonna do a boring and do it satisfactorily, then it's done.
Can't
I've
force
built
them.
stuff on wetlands. I've put several different structures on wetlands, and I can assure you, you either need a geotechnical boring or you need to have a design that you're doing helical piles that you go until refusal. Is that what it's called, Courtney?
Yeah, I mean, I've run into exactly the same thing. And you gotta stop work, you gotta redesign the whole thing. You gotta come back and get it re-engineered and re-amend the permit and all of that. And it just seems, it seems stupid that they're not willing to spend $10 to go out and get the damn boring done and get it settled now, and then it's done.
Who just left?
Huh?
Justin.
Oh, Justin left us. Okay.
We have enough
Anyway,
of us.
I have no problem requiring it.
All right,
What
let
do
me
you
ask the lead.
pleasure, guys?
Let me-
Require it or give them the option?
I
May I
don't
speak,
mind giving them
please?
the option. Go on.
Would my co-chairs please let me speak? I'd like to ask Pat, sorry to put you on the spot, but is that defensible to require a test boring?
Well, I'm kind of surprised by it because the engineer was saying emphatically, it's not necessary. I'm telling them it's fine, go ahead. It didn't make any sense to anybody who was an engineer last meeting saying, has engineering background. It almost looks like.
But
I
if
can
he
tell
has
you,
the
I looked
stamp and he's, excuse me, if he has the stamp and he says it's acceptable, what else are we supposed to do?
He has a civil engineering stamp. I looked him up. There's a way you can look up what kinds of licenses people have in the state. And there are structural engineering licenses and he does not have, or he's not listed as one.
All right.
He has a
So let's
civil
require-
engineering.
Let's require a boring.
Yeah, I agree. He's not a structural engineer.
So if they ignore our condition and go forward, this should, I think that you should also include a caveat that if they ignore this requirement and they have a problem, we will not give emergency relief.
If they go forward, we'll stop the project. We won't.
All right,
we
you're
won't
on top
stop
of
the
them.
permit.
Okay. I didn't realize you could oversee that way.
Well,
They
as a
have to
practice-
show it to Jen before they start the project.
As a
Okay.
practical matter, are we gonna be down there to, if they were to find they had to change the scope? As a practical matter, unless they inform us, are we gonna necessarily know?
Well, that's, yeah.
In other words, In other words, we're relying on their coming back and so on, rather than following the old dictum of, well, we'll go ahead and do it and beg for forgiveness. I mean, these are the little issues that bother me, because I sat on the other side of the fence for a lot of time, and I had engineers actually tell me, just go ahead and do it and beg for forgiveness. And I'm telling you, I won't name names, but they're engineers that come in front of this board all the time.
I know who they are.
Okay.
This
Well,
is,
there's
I
a
mean,
difference between certifying the foundation versus certifying what's under the foundation.
yeah, there is. And
All
I'm
right,
particularly concerned because I know this area. I know somebody who also lived on this marsh, and basically her backyard was, right near her backyard was wetland.
Mr. Patton,
Oh, I was just demonstrating what it would be if you raised your hand.
amazing, isn't it? Mr. Walsh?
I have a question about the purview of our commission. Are we supposed to require foundation integrity, or are we supposed to be involved with protecting the environment?
Well, this came about, the board started requiring this, Kevin, because there was one issue out on Beckles Road.
Beckles Road.
Where they proposed to put a second story addition on. We didn't have them give any information on the foundation. They started the project, and this goes exactly to what Courtney was talking about. They started the project, realized they couldn't build the second floor without a new foundation. I think cribbed the house up and started excavating, which was way beyond the scope of what we had permitted, and started excavating out a new foundation, or excavation and pouring a new foundation. And the only reason we found out about it was because Tom Corvo drove by and saw it going on. And we had to put a stop work order on the project because they didn't have the permit to do all of the excavation work they were doing. So this is why the board started looking at requiring just some sort of documentation that the foundation can support the weight of a second floor. So we didn't end up in situations where we put a stop work order on a property because all of a sudden they were excavating and not telling us.
Yeah,
Well,
Peter,
if
you understand, I mean, if you say drive a mile,
Courtney,
it's minimal.
stop.
And-
Interrupting. Let Peter finish.
Sorry.
Man, what is it tonight? Peter.
So if we suspect that the foundation doesn't have enough structural integrity, and it will require additional excavation work, which would be in our purview. We have had similar situations that we have required another engineer with a more preferable stamped structural to also add his comment to say it's all right.
Well, what I did do, Peter, is we usually don't get this level of pushback when we ask for that information. We've gotten it from structural engineers. We've gotten them from architects, where, Jamie, I think you're the one that told me an architect is also qualified to
They can stamp plans.
Yeah, certify something like that. I did show this gentleman's seal and his little note about his structural background to Gary Street, the building inspector. He did say that the building department would accept that, but they usually look for some sort of structural engineer. He was actually trying to find it in the code, Jamie.
Yeah, there's two different issues here. Structural engineer for the building that exists versus geotechnical engineer that would certify the existing ground. So Peter, a lot of what we're doing is it's preemptive. It's really just so that they don't have to come back and it becomes an emergency for us to allow them to do more work. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense.
I would suppose that we have the authority to request information, and if someone doesn't provide the information, we can turn the project down. So based on that, maybe we can say that we require a geo whatever engineer's stamp. Theoretically, we could do it.
And that's what's up for discussion right now.
Yeah, exactly, Jamie. That's the issue is that can the ground support the additional weight?
Okay, so on that note, my only question is, if we require it, do we stand on legal ground? I don't see why we wouldn't, but I'm just throwing it out there because there's been a lot of discussion about this.
Isn't it just what Peter said? We could have asked them that ahead of time.
Well, in hindsight, we probably should have addressed this already. Pat?
I think Peter's analysis is spot on. And I also query whether or not in the past the commission has denied a second story because it would require digging further into a resource area of, groundwater, basically. I'm assuming if this is right next to a marsh, they might go through peat and into water. I'm just curious, has that ever been denied for that reason?
Not that I can remember.
Okay.
I don't remember us requiring a test boring. I mean, we've asked for structural engineer stamps for the existing foundation before. I remember distinctly a few times, but I don't recall. But this is a unique area either also. Jen?
You did require one on 187 Surf Drive because it was so close to Fresh River. I do think, usually we require one as a matter of just course. This is right on that wetland. I mean, they're right on this wetland. So I do think that it is a little closer to an actual wetland resource area than you're used to seeing. If you're concerned, you had them do one on Surf Drive.
Just had one tonight on Chappaquoit Road. Yeah. They did it the geotechnical boring.
That's because he's putting it on pilings though. And that's why Surf Drive did it too. They were putting them on pilings.
Yeah.
Well,
but I mean, we require it if the geology / setting requires it.
It all goes to scope of work.
I didn't see your hand raised.
It all goes to defining the scope of work. And what impact does the scope of work have on the environment? And so if you don't have to do test borings or any of that other stuff, you can have a more narrow scope of work than if you have to do test borings. And that's what makes this whole discussion relevant. And so, because what we're saying, in effect, is if they have to change the scope of work and do more work and more excavation than this order of conditions allowed, then they're going to have to come back because they're going to have to stop work. And what I worry about, as I said before, is we are not we don't have the personnel to kind of ride herd on every project we permit. And so what we want to do is when it goes out the door have pretty much answered most of the questions about scope of work. And so the door is not, there's not these loose ends. And that's really what this goes to in my mind.
Steve, did you have something?
No, sir.
Okay, I thought I saw your hand. All right, what else? Anybody have anything else? All right, so it sounds like that's what we want for a condition, Jen.
Sure. So not the and either or, just that's what you want. Okay.
Steve?
I thought we were agreeing that we would have an either or. If they do it, they can't come back under an emergency. I sense the committee going that way.
That's what I'm asking for clarification. Which way do you want to go? It doesn't matter to me. I'll write it whatever way you guys want me to write it.
Peter?
Jamie, could you have a straw poll and see which way to have the vote?
Okay, well, let's do that. We'll poll. Do we, the question for this is, are we gonna require a test boring? Is that clear?
Yes.
Who wants a test for it? Raise your hand.
Yes, boring?
So we have two that want to require it.
I won.
3?
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
We're going around in circles here because I don't see it as an either or. I see it as you need the boring. You ignored that condition and staff wasn't there to see you ignoring that condition. And then you come running back to us for an emergency and you've already been warned in the order that if you come running back to us, you're gonna have to refile.
Okay, so I'm jumping on board requiring it, so there we go.
Okay, it's a requirement.
So
The only thing I would say is next time we're gonna, if we have an area like this that's obvious, we're gonna have to make sure it's known before we get to this point.
right, because if, you're right, Jamie, because if, I'm sorry, may I speak?
Go ahead.
You're right.
Steve said no.
We should require it clearly up front so that so the project is properly designed and we know actually what scope of work we're conditioning. Because if they come back with a test boring, it's gonna change what we approved. And now we're gonna have to be faced with how do we ex post facto recondition the project without them coming back to amend the permit.
Right, this will negate that. Now, it's not a surprise to them because we have been discussing it. They may not, might have been hopeful we wouldn't require it, but there it is. Steve, did you have something? Okay. All right, anything else? We beat this to death.
I'll make a motion that we have an order of conditions, but Peter has a question.
Just suppose that we vote positive that to require the boring, and the boring comes back, they have to do more work to replace the excavation.
And they need an amendment.
Thank you,
What's the
co-chair.
process forward?
That's the process. They would need an amendment.
Yeah, they would have to file an amendment.
Okay.
And the upside is they do a boring and it shows that it's fine. They show it to staff and everybody moves on.
And Courtney said they're $10, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
Get
tell
two.
you, they're not $10.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed, which includes the requirement of a test boring. Speaking of boring, let's move on. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Oh, boy. Next up, Judith and Thomas Stetson, 0 Quistit Avenue, parcel 5003-003A 000, Woods Hole, Mass. And before Betsy asks, yes, the next one is tied in with it indirectly. We
And
have to take
before
them
Jamie,
separate.
and before Jamie asks, we're all on the quorum.
All right.
Reconstructing the sea walls.
Yes.
Now, let me grab my plans. Is this the one where the salt marsh is, or is it the other one?
So
I give up.
one of them has the salt marsh and we discussed it extensively. And they're not going to do anything to the salt marsh.
Which I don't understand how they're reconstructing. The salt marsh is right there.
No, there's a gap between the salt marsh and the wall.
Not much of one. Okay. Dimensions, temporary forms, how will the marsh be? That's 0. So you guys are good with Dave?
Yes.
Okay.
I think they said they were using some sheathing to protect the grass.
Sheathing?
That
Okay,
right?
I'll go back and watch the discussion.
Okay.
Anybody want to see anything special in there? Any little piece you want to beat to death? Sorry.
Prettiest
Yeah,
property I've
Archie.
been on.
I know. All right, what are you thinking?
Make a motion to accept or to issue an order as discussed.
Or second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. If there's nothing else. Ta-da! Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Joshua Bernstein, trustee, 282 Quistit Avenue, nominee trust, 282 Quistit Avenue, Woods Hole, Mass. This is number 2 of 2. This is the rebuilding of the seawall.
Anything, guys? No? Okay.
All right. Anybody have anything they want in there? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept or to issue an order of this, an order of conditions as discussed.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Kristen, you just witnessed how we can take one little piece and beat the living heck out of it. All right, last motion. Who's
Oh,
up?
wait, one more.
Wait, hold on.
Has everybody, I mean, I'll put the matter on next week if you prefer some, a chance to kind of look at the draft regulations, but Greg Frazier is looking for a letter of support on draft regulations for houseboats. Apparently the fleet is getting a little too big down there in Woods Hole, and he's looking to implement some regulations on those structures, floating structures. And he's just looking for a support from the commission. He's going to be requiring them to use the environmentally friendly helical moorings and to provide the town with pump out information, so we're certain that they are not discharging wastewater into the harbor down there. Is that something the board feels comfortable in authorizing tonight, or do you want me to just put it on for more formal discussion next week?
Mr. Patton?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be in support of this. I read the regulations and I think they're simple, clear, and they're giving the guys 20 feet of height. I was amazed. I think it's a good policy.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a
Take a
motion to,
motion to send a letter of support.
yeah, I'll second it. Gladfelter.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Good. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Parasite.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We will issue a letter of support. Thank you for that very succinct presentation, Mr. Patton. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Woo-hoo.
Do we
All right,
want
let's take a
discussion?
minute to reflect. No, let's not. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Parasite.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
everybody.
Chairman.
See you.